This is the first of the 3 levels and is the introductory level, in which the player is introduced to the concept of fizzle fields and how they work. The player will see blocks dropped down onto faith panels, which will then bounce them onto these pressure plates. It can be activated and deactivated from this button. This will allow the player to explore them safely from the other side of a glass wall, which will make the player less likely to feel anxious about having to deal with a new mechanic, and is a good laboratory setting for them to first be introduced to it. I am sorry for the delay. There was a small battery problem, nothing serious. When the player enters the level, they will see the cubes drop and bounce into the fizzle field, which is restricting their progress to these buttons that opens this door. If the player looks at the road from the buttons, it leads to the fizzle fields, which will then allow the player to continue. Opening the fizzle fields at the appropriate time allows the player access to the next level. It's a good introductory process and doesn't offer much in the way of challenges, which isn't really the point of this level. This level serves as the reinforcement level of the 3 levels that are being produced for this assignment. In this level, the player learns how to interact personally with the fizzle fields, as well as how to get around them, specifically by activating and deactivating them with these buttons to get the cube from one end to the other. This level is not meant to have any particular challenges, but is instead meant to reinforce the concept of fizzle fields and the way they work to the player. When the player first enters the level, they find themselves in a room with a fizzle field, which they have never personally interacted with before, for all that they will have made contact with them in the previous level via buttons and through glass. On seeing that they do not dissolve, they might say, well, I know, cubes will dissolve on contact, so clearly what I need to do is just make a portal. Oh dear, that doesn't seem to have worked. Maybe I can portal through. Nope, that's not going to work either. Well, what else do I know? They can be turned on and off with buttons. That seems to have worked. And hey diggity, the box made it through. This level then encourages the player to recreate the situation several times, maybe even learning how they themselves can also get around the limitations of the fizzle fields. When the player reaches the end phase of this level, they can place the cube on the pedestal and exit the level. Several players have actually gotten terribly turned around here in this middle room. However, it seems to be more of an inexperience issue than of a level design issue. We considered putting up signage, however, if you're going to get turned around in 3 rooms, I think that perhaps you should practice your spatial recognition skills. So this level was meant to reinforce the concepts of the fizzle fields to the player, and that's what it does. You perform the same action repeatedly to learn the concepts of the fizzle fields and their mechanics. This is the 3rd and final level involved in this assignment, and is supposed to represent the testing level that tests the skills that the player has learned. It also involves several other puzzles, and involves a new component, lasers, that is supposed to make this harder. Of the 3 levels, this is the level that's undergone the most revision, since it wasn't terribly well signed out at first, and it was several sections were considered dark or hard to find. So without further ado, When the player first walks into the level, they can immediately see the laser relay, and when they look to the right, they can immediately see the laser. This is supposed to make the laser puzzle slightly more obvious given they have not been trained on it before. There is also a single patch of black and non-portable surface in the middle of a portable surface. If the player looks up, they'll be able to see the ceiling vent that provides a secondary way through other than this airlock that is based entirely off of the reinforcement level that was shown earlier. The player has to both extend this ramp up to the doorway and then open the doorway. The player will most immediately see that effect, which most notably flips over that panel. So the player might be interested in going over to check it out. The player has also learned how to get around airlocks with their portals, and so is able to have a reflection cube over here on this side. If the player notices that this is open, they may also notice that they can now travel into the vent system. Where they will find a mirrored cube and a pressure plate. Now, if you'll remember from earlier, one of the two cubes in this room is non-mirrored, and so seemed useless for the puzzle. However, that would be perfect for weighting down a pressure plate without wasting a mirrored cube. If the player goes over to this end of the vent, they find that it is now completely covered with a fizzle field, and so they won't try and drop the mirrored cube through it, instead returning back to the original room, where the player now has a laser beam, 2 mirrored cubes. The player will, of course, redirect the laser beam into the relay, where they already have a mirrored cube, to bounce it back into the laser room. And they can use the key in here to link it back up, which has opened the door. The previous way to solve the puzzle was a little bit more annoying, and it was very difficult to place this cube because it was a little too close to the stairs here, and so trying to place the cube down ended with the player rapidly bouncing up and down. That has been one of the few most important changes to this level. And so that was the test level. It explores several different ways that you can turn on and off fizzle fields, and the various ways that it can block players, like by limiting the way that they can move around cubes, and so forcing them to treat each area as a separate puzzle.